Hello, Michael. Thank you very much for taking your time to share your experience with ABAP in Eclipse. And first of all, it would be very interesting for our participants if you could tell us since when you are working with ABAP in Eclipse and why did you switch to it?
Yeah. Hi, Peter. Nice to meet you. And thanks for the chance to talk about the ABAP development tools in Eclipse today. I think it was back in 2017. I began to work with the ADT. And since then, I'm addicted and I'm working nearly every week, sometimes every day with it. So now I have an experience of 3 years, but I think it started in 2010. So it was almost there for 7 years before I started to work with it. And the reason for me to switch to this IDE was very personal. There was a subnote in the support portal I've seen there and reported that the typical ABAP workbench is now in maintenance mode and that new features will be realized in the ADT. So that was my first impression that, okay, if I have to work for 10, 20 or 30 years, in Germany I have to work 35 years to retire. So I have to work with this new IDE to learn it so that I can do my job in the future. Another very important point at that time was that I was working a lot with ABAP in a procedural manner. That was not okay because the object-oriented way is the preferred way, the common way. And I decided to switch to the object-oriented work at the same time while switching the IDE.
Yeah, interesting. And when you switched the IDE, what was for you the challenge? I mean, what was easy? What was difficult?
The easy part was the installation. It's not very challenging because you can install it on your own device, on your notebook or on your desktop. That was not a problem at all. But the difficult part was to switch from a form-based editor with the classic DynPro surface to a pure codec. You're working in Eclipse more focused on the source code. You work with views and perspectives and so on. But the main part is source code. You see code. It's just like an editor. And I've always seen the workbench a little bit the other way, more form-based editor. When you think of a function module and you see the signature of this function modules, the parameters, importing, exporting, you have special fields, you can input your parameter names and so on. And that's not the case when you're working with the Eclipse IDE. Another important and difficult part was the debugger. I have to say that I'm still using the debugger in the SAP GUI because I was not very happy with the debugger in the IDE. Eclipse was not good at the time. Perhaps I should try it again. And what was very hard was to decide what can you do in the ADTs. So in ABAP Development Tools, what is there and what is not there? There's no screen painter. You have to use the screen painter in classic SAP GUI with classic DynPros, and you cannot do that with the ADT. There are some things I remember one day when I opened a function module in the ADT, and I was totally sure that there's an implicit enhancement at the beginning of this function module, and it was not there. And I had a look on the same function module in the SAP GUI, and I saw it, and I was totally sure, okay, that's a very big difference. If you don't see it in the ADT, you have to know that there is one. But I think this is today possible with the ADTs too.
So you mainly work in the ECC environment, or you're already in S4HANA environment, or on both? Or?
Mainly ECC. We switched now with the first customers to S4. And I think it's very important to know the ADT before you switch to S4, because there are some new challenges at the ABAP CDS and things when you think of steampunk technology. When you have a look at the cloud technologies, you will use the ABAP for Eclipse too.
I see. Okay, so if somebody is new to ABAP in Eclipse and wants to start and is fortunately already on S4HANA or not, I mean, what would your advice? How can you more easy learn to work with ABAP development tools?
I think first you have to work with ADTs. You should work with the ADT before starting. But give me a moment. Please repeat your question. I think I gave you the wrong answer.
Yeah, so the question is, what would you recommend for someone who's new to ABAP in Eclipse? How could he easily or more easy work with this? Do you have any tip for somebody who's new? How to start? What to start with? What to do, what not to do? Okay,
now I understand. Yes, okay. So tips for beginners, that is a very interesting question and a broad field to talk about. First of all, take your time. It's very important if you have time. If you have a project, you're working on a project with a hard deadline, don't try to work with ADT. You need the time to explore it, to make your own experience, to discuss with your colleagues. And it's not a good idea to do that when you are under fire and your customer is asking you, oh, when it's ready, when can I work with my software now? So you need time. Take your time and concentrate on the source code, not on the frames around it. So not on the form-based or not form-based environment where you put your source code in. Just concentrate on the source code and you will see Eclipse is a great editor. But don't try to rebuild or don't try to look for the same, absolutely same functionality you have in the workbench. And then a good idea would be to team up with well-trained people with experience and people who are working with the ADT for some time. They can give you the answer to some questions very fast, so you can spare your time. And then try to write modern ABAP in the ADTs. Don't try to reproduce procedural coding. Try to work with classes, with interfaces, do all the modern ABAP things. Try to work with unit tests. And then you will see it's great that ABAP in Eclipse based on the view technology. Yes, that would be some tips at the early beginning.
Okay, so thank you very much one more time, Michael, for taking your time to share your knowledge. And yeah, have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.